Just 1 minute to talk about Doctor Who. Just 1 minute, or maybe two. Welcome to YouTube, we're talking Doctor Who. For you.
Hello and welcome to this episode of TMDWP, where I'm covering the final bit of Series 6. The Series 6 rewatch comes to an end. How sad, you might say, or what a relief, depending on what you've thought of these episodes and of Series 6, as I've gone back and reviewed it. And I'll start by saying that I completely forgot to mention the God Complex last time. I was like, oh yeah, I've only got closing time and the Wedding River Song to go. Because I sort of thought, well, I've kind of covered the God Complex, which I have in episode 102, I believe is the right number, that I did last summer, which is a video episode. There are some thoughts already about that story in that, if you want to go back and watch it, there will be a link in the show notes to the episode if you didn't see it at the time. But obviously I did have to rewatch it this time to talk about it, and it is, although problematic, if you remember what I said before, it does remain one of the better episodes of the series, because of the issues it deals with. And although I find myself in disagreement with Toby Whithouse about some of the aspects of his story, and if it's going to be coherent, some of the things that he seems to think are going on are not going on, but it remains an enjoyable watch. Rita is one of those companions we missed because the story kills her off, but she would have been great and only served to remind me how I'm still not at all a fan of Amy and Rory, really, as companions. I would have happily seen more stories with Rita. And it's just an interesting story, and it's directed well. The setting is handled very well by the director Nick Hurren, I think directed this one. And the issues of faith and fear, and the way that it plays off the back of the Curse of Fenric, in that story was one that dealt with faith being a shield, and so it totally makes sense that in that same universe there could be a monster that could feed off that shield energy. That in one part of the universe it wards off vampires, in another it's food for an alien minotaur god creature. And again, it's one of those things where, as I've said before, the strength of the story correlates with how well I perceive the Doctor. And no, I'm never going to warm to Matt Smith as the Doctor. He still falls very short for me, and that's not his fault, that's my fault. That's my particular opinion. But the better the story, the less I will be focused on the fact that I don't really see him as the Doctor. So that's the God Complex. More thoughts on that, as I say, in episode 102. Please go back and watch that, or watch it for the first time if you haven't already seen it, because I think I have some interesting things to say. And because that was a video episode, it was scripted, and it's much less rambly than what I've just said. And if you have any thoughts on that or this, then min_dw@yahoo.co.uk is the place to comment, or of course on Twitter @TMDWP. And so we come to the final two episodes, which were probably the most hazy in my memory. Really couldn't remember much of what happened in Wedding and River Song. The basic outline of closing time was there. Prior to coming to this episode, my memory was that I had very much enjoyed The Lodger and that I had very much disliked Closing Time. A rewatch of Closing Time, I actually found it a lot more watchable and enjoyable this time around. I don't know what it was about last time, but I suspect that the fact that I was sat there watching it with my 3-month-old asleep on me made something of a difference to how I perceived the episode. Because I think one of the things that really annoyed me about the episode originally was the whole Doctor I Can Speak baby, he's called Stormageddon, all this kind of stuff. And it just really annoyed me. You know, I have problems with the TARDIS translation circuits becoming a thing within the plot, because it's a whole can of worms. It doesn't really make sense if you dive into it. And the whole purpose of it is, in my mind, is to make stories work that otherwise wouldn't work, because people wouldn't be speaking the right kinds of languages. And so to take that a step further and say, oh, the Doctor now speaks baby, when a baby can't actually communicate in language, just seemed silly. Now that I have a baby, and the only way that she can communicate is by crying at me or smiling at me, and lovable though that is, there are times when I just want her to be able to speak and tell me how she's feeling and tell me what's wrong and tell me how to fix it. And so I suddenly warmed to this episode in a way that I could not possibly have warmed to it before. And I was like, yes, actually, if somebody came along and could communicate with me what my baby wanted me to know, I would love that person. And actually, I was there with Matt Smith and much more in this episode. And I think maybe it's just the overall combination of him and Amy and Rory that I don't like in particular. And so when he's on his own, and I do like James Corden. James Corden is a good laugh. I don't think he's a particularly great actor. I think that shows up in this episode. But he's very charismatic and he's very fun to be with. And so that pairing really, really, really carries this episode. I still think that the I blew them up with love ending is a bit cringeworthy and on the edge of what's plausible even within the Doctor Who universe. But having said that, the Cybermen, more than any monster, have been so inconsistent over the course of the series, just in terms of what they are. Are they fleshy bodies with stuff strapped on the outside of them? That's been more the Stephen Moffat approach, at least until more recently, with the head in the cyber head in Pandorica Opens, and with the bits being strapped onto the outside of Craig. Are they a brain in a suit, which was more the kind of RTD kind of era? Are they the Attack of the Cybermen style, where clearly limbs have been replaced wholesale, but the rejects still have a head? How much of those are organic? All that kind of stuff. So the fact that this particular lot of Cybermen had this particular process, and for some reason Craig's emotional strength could overpower it, it seems a bit weak. I mean, in terms of it makes the Cybermen look weak. I suppose the plot allowed for that in a certain sense, but it does seem a little ridiculous. But Doctor Who is a happy family show, and if it went for realism, lots more companions would die, more companions than just Bill would have been turned into Cybermen by now. And so maybe I'll let them have this, and just say, actually, this time around I did enjoy this episode a lot more than I thought. I think in terms of expectation, this one really exceeded expectations. I didn't expect to revise my opinion on this one at all, really, and I ended up revising my opinion. And yeah, as I say, that is to a large extent due to my own circumstances having changed. That I am now a dad, and that makes this episode a completely different kettle of fish for me as a viewer. And so we come to the finale, the wedding of River Song, and I really had forgotten most of this. I'd entirely forgotten the train, I'd forgotten the pyramid, I'd remembered the Doctor going with Mark Gatiss' character and all the skulls. I'd forgotten why they went. I'd forgotten that it was Dorium's head that they were going to find. I'm still not entirely sure why he went to find Dorium's head. Was that ever explained? Maybe I wasn't paying attention at that point. All I really remembered was Churchill and time happening all at once at the beginning, and then the Doctor being inside the Tesselector at the end, which was the resolution of the whole thing, which I think is a perfectly good resolution. I know there was lots of discussion at the time as to the fact that it was a cheat. I don't think it was a cheat at all. It was very clever that that's how it was done. And again, I think there was more to enjoy in this episode than I was expecting. There were definite aspects of it. The whole history happening at the same time, the Doctor telling Churchill the story, I quite enjoyed that passage of the story. And the idea that the Silents were kind of biding their time in the pyramid and waiting to break out and zap everybody. The iDrive thing, the explanation for Madame Kavarian's patch, that was good. It all kind of hung together as a story. But as the title implies, this was the Wedding of River Song, and I'm not going to repeat myself because you've had enough of me moaning on about the Doctor and River's relationship. So we'll just park that. No, I wasn't a fan of the season-long arc, But again, I found this episode a lot more enjoyable this time round with those, I think just with expectations suitably lowered, because I'd remembered that I hadn't enjoyed this series. I was able to watch it this time with a bit of distance of time, and to be able to just say, okay, let's try and enjoy it for what it is, knowing the things that I already don't like about it. Let's watch out for the good stuff. And for what it was was quite enjoyable. And the resolution, as I said, is clever. It's a nice Doctor Who-y thing. The Doctor is actually inside the Tesselector. Quite how the Doctor is then, and this is the main issue that I have with the Time War as well. The idea that there can be before and after in a time travel show, and so the events of this season lead up to the Doctor dying, but then after that he's going to step back and wipe himself from history, as it were. And I don't understand how you do that, given that it's about time travel. In the same way that, like, the classic series is before the Time War and the new series is after the Time War, and yet the Doctor goes to some of the same places and times that he went either side of it. If anybody can explain that to me, then do. I know it's a convenient plot device, and so from a Doylist point of view, which is where I tend to stand, actually, of, well, let's just write the story to be whatever it needs to be, that's fine. But in a kind of how this universe actually works kind of way, I can't wrap my head around that. But I'm quite happy for the Doctor to be stepping back and not being this mythical figure and just getting on with having his adventures. And I do recall that I enjoyed Series 7 a lot more. So I think I'm probably going to go on, actually. I'm not going to make any promises at this point. There are other plans for TMDWP coming up. As you'll know, I didn't release an episode last weekend. Life just got very busy, as it does. Thank you very much to Stephen from Radio Fuscara just saying, I'm surprised that you're even back at all. So it's great to know that people are still listening and still enjoying episodes I'm doing. So I'm gonna try and take the pressure off a little bit and try and do more of a fortnightly schedule. So you'll have this episode on the 17th, and then the next one will be 2 weeks after that, which will be the beginning of October. And let's see if I can keep up a fortnightly schedule. And I am not sure if I've said this on here or if I've said it on Twitter. Video is returning. I have shot some material for another couple of episodes. One of those I think I might have to rework, so that in its current form might not see the light of day. But there are things that are in the pipeline. As I'm recording this now, I've just, prior to this, come off a Skype call with Michael from the Tin Dog podcast. And we are launching a podcast about UFO, the Jerry Anderson show from the late 60s, early 70s. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great show, really enjoyable, and we are going to podcast about it. It's 26 episodes long. We're going to release our commentary on those episodes. They're not commentaries. We're going to release our episodes, reviewing those episodes on a fortnightly basis. So it will take us a year to get through the whole series. And we're going to be watching out for actors who've been in Doctor Who, because there's quite a lot of them. We're going to be commenting on the show and generally rambling along in the way that only Michael and I can. I will put a promo for that when we have decided a release date and are starting to publicise it, but I thought I'd just give you all a heads up now that that's also what's going on at the moment, that we are collaborating on a podcast. So until next time, I hope you've enjoyed my rundown of Series 6. I hope I haven't been too negative. I've definitely tried to keep my negativity out of it. It's been a more enjoyable watch this time around than it was last time. I can't say that I've been entirely converted, and I can't say that I'm going to be coming back to Series 6 anytime soon to revisit it, but I will definitely watch it again in the future, and no doubt when my child, possibly children, if there are more, are older and I'm introducing them to Doctor Who, will see it again, all in a new light. And I'm just grateful to my daughter for at least helping me see Closing Time in a fresh way and helping me to enjoy that a lot more. Until next time, ta-ra.
Just 1 minute to talk about Doctor Who. Just 1 minute, or maybe 2. Welcome to YouTube, we're talking Doctor Who.